and mass murder targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days.
And at this hour, Iran retaliating, targeting several U.S. bases around the Middle East, including in Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Air sirens also sounding in Israel overnight. Let's bring in Fox News Chief Senior Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst. Good morning, Trey. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Griff, we are following the latest information from the Middle East. Israel remains under Iranian ballistic missile attack at this hour. Alerts are coming in across the country. Earlier, sirens were sounding here in Tel Aviv. And we understand, according to the military, most of this incoming fire was intercepted by Israel's air defense systems. The Americans and the Israelis are still striking Iran in a campaign that is expected to last for several days, targeting not just ballistic missile launching positions or command and control centers, but reports indicate government buildings and significant government infrastructure belonging to the Iranian regime. One person on our team just got out of a briefing with the Israeli military, and I'm going to give you the latest information as we're getting it in just now, Griff. The Israelis plan to call up 70,000 reservists over the next several days, understanding that this conflict with Iran is expected to last for many days. Many of these reservists will be manning air defense systems as this incoming ballistic missile fire is expected to continue from Iran and could expand to regional proxies like Hezbollah in southern Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen. According to a military official here in Israel, dozens of strikes were carried out this morning alone. Forces are now deployed across Israel to man those air defense systems, and coordination and cooperation, according to this military official, is something that's never been seen before, operating at the highest level with American counterparts. Reports are coming in from wire services that many IRGC commanders and political officials were targeted in these strikes. Again, these are initial reports, but it gives you an indication that this is not a limited operation going after the Iranians. This is certainly one of the larger options that the Americans and the Israelis had to go after the Iranian regime. In the days ahead, we can expect Iran to continue responding. They are already targeting U.S. forces in places like Bahrain. Air defense systems are active in the Gulf. Reports of possible strikes even in countries other than Bahrain, like Saudi Arabia, for example. And so there's going to be a lot of moving parts here. Our Pentagon team is tracking what the Americans are doing to stage in the days ahead and how this campaign is going to continue. But we heard overnight from President Trump himself, who said this is a massive and ongoing operation. President Trump gave the Iranians an olive branch, an opportunity for diplomacy to get rid of their nuclear program, to limit their ballistic missile program, and to end support of regional proxies. They refused to do so, and thus this operation was launched. Again, the latest information, Griff, from Israel. There are alerts coming in at this hour from across the region, and we understand, again, right now, as we are speaking, that in the northern city of Haifa, as far south as the city of Beersheba in the Negev Desert, and also in central Israel, including the city of Jerusalem, there are alerts going out because the Iranians are doing what they can to respond to these ongoing American and Israeli strikes. Griff.
And Trey, as you mentioned, the Iranian retaliation in multiple areas in the Middle East, just crossing the wires, we're learning that the UAE, United Arab Emirates, saying that this attack is a, quote, flagrant violation of national sovereignty and international law, and that the UAE reserves its full right to respond to this escalation. Talk to me, if you can, just a moment about how, as this operation begins, and as you noted, as we're told, this is likely to last days, not hours, how the region will respond to this.
There were a lot of options here for the Americans and the Israelis in terms of strikes against Iran. And while we work to confirm exactly who in Iran was targeted amid many reports that are circulating and what buildings were targeted, we are looking at the regional implications of this. And the fact that the Iranians are responding against regional countries means that there could be response from countries like the United Arab Emirates. there is close coordination, we understand, with the Americans and their counterparts across the region. And remember, there are U.S. planes, not just here in Israel, but in places like Jordan and other countries that have been used as staging grounds for American forces. Qatar, the Al Udeid base that normally houses around 10,000.
At Vistaprint, we print signs so people can see your brand up close. But we also print signs so that people can see your business here.
Will continue as well. Remember, we have to step back here and look at the U.S. military buildup over the past 2 months. It is the largest, at least in terms of air power, since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. And just yesterday, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, arrived in the Eastern Mediterranean. And that is to help to protect the Israeli coast. But also, you have planes there that can run operations if needed. You also have the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group in the Arabian Sea. You have a number of U.S. destroyers across the region. And you have over-the-horizon capabilities for the Americans. And that's not to mention the Israeli Air Force that conducted a bombing campaign last summer against Iran that lasted for 12 days. But at the end of all of this, the man who will be able to decide how long this will go on for is President Trump. He has ordered this operation to destroy Iran's ability to threaten the region and to threaten American forces and to threaten Israel. And that operation is unfolding as we speak. This is now a regional war. There is no other way to put it. The Iranians are targeting not just Israel, but they are targeting other countries in the Gulf. And so the days ahead will be intense. Israelis will spend the days ahead in and out of bomb shelters. And as we reported to you at the top here, Griff, Israelis are calling up 70,000 reservists because they understand they're going to have to man air defense systems for a number of days. And President Trump tonight, when he addressed not just the nation, but the world, Griff, he said there is a real possibility of American casualties in this war that is now erupting. But understanding that the diplomatic option was pursued, and that the Iranians did not take that olive branch that was provided to them by the Americans. They had an off-ramp, and they didn't take it. And now a war has erupted. The Americans and the Israelis are expected to inflict heavy blows on the Iranian regime. And given just how widespread these strikes are, this is, again, on the outer spectrum of the possible options for the Americans and the Israelis to respond. This could significantly weaken the Iranian regime, if not eventually collapse it. Griff.
And that is certainly a big question there indeed as we watch this unfold. Trey Yingst live for us in Tel Aviv. Trey, stay safe. We'll check back in with you throughout the morning. Let's bring in now the Fox News chief national correspondent, Jennifer Griffin. And Jennifer, as we look at that map of our U.S. forces in and around Iran and these strikes beginning, you're reporting that this is a joint operation and that the targeting of Iran's leadership is actually being led by Israel. What can you tell us?
Well, I think it's really important to separate out which targets are being targeted by the American military versus the Israeli military. And I have a very well-placed source who told me that the Israelis are targeting Iran's leadership. They've targeted the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, his compound. We've reported that, as well as the defense minister, as well as other top leaders, the head of the judiciary. Israel is saying that they believe they've been very successful and that they may have, in fact, killed many of those Iranian leaders. But the U.S. military is not involved in those strikes. The U.S. military is focusing on ballistic missile sites, military targets that pose an imminent threat. So there is a little bit of a divided responsibility here. And I think also perhaps the Israelis always have very good intelligence about the Iranian leadership, just like we saw in when they targeted Hezbollah and Hamas, but Hezbollah particularly in Lebanon. I think it's also important to point out, Griff, that the only U.S. bases that have not been targeted so far by Iranian missiles are in Oman. Oman, of course, was the foreign minister. Its foreign minister was trying to mediate a nuclear deal. He even flew to Washington after mediating in Geneva to try and appeal to Vice President J.D. Vance, suggesting that to give negotiations more time and to try and stop this attack, which, as Trey pointed out, is really turning into a regional conflict at this point, given the number of targets. I can also report that there were no casualties. We heard that there was a missile that landed, and we saw some video of a missile landing near the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. But I'm told there were no casualties, and in fact, that base is largely empty at this point. The target that was struck was an empty warehouse. So the U.S. military has been planning for this for some time, and they knew that the Iranians would immediately target the bases in UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. And so they've been quietly drawing down from those bases, reorienting the warplanes and staff that are based there, but particularly the warplanes were moved, and the fuelers and the tankers were moved to other bases a safer distance away. But Iran has even fired missiles at the U.S. base in Saudi Arabia, and that's pretty unusual. Once Iran has fired those missiles at the U.S. allies in the region, then my understanding from talking to experts and military planners is that, and to diplomats, is that those countries then will consider themselves under attack, and in defense of their own population, they then will allow the U.S. to use their air bases,
Our plan to protect Ontario is building new nuclear facilities.
I'm not an astronaut.
That is something we expected to happen, but the Iranians are sort of playing into U.S. hands by targeting bases in Saudi, in Jordan, in other areas. Griff?
So much to unpack here, Jennifer, and you're right about those regional implications that Trey was reporting on. As we were seeing on the wires, the UAE now calling this a flagrant violation of international law, and that they reserve the right to respond. But I want to ask you, you talked about Oman's foreign minister, Badr al-Busadi, who did that interview with CBS saying that the Iranians are now willing to go to zero enrichment, but it didn't seem to be enough. The President Trump, in his announcement, talking about how he seeks peace, but he will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. We expect President Trump to address the nation later, but in that message we got overnight, Jennifer, do you believe that the president laid out really the question that Americans are waking up to today, which is, why have we done this now?
Well, I think the president laid out very clearly in his initial Truth Social post the history of the relationship between Iran, the United States, and Israel since 1979. And he called Iran the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And he's right. If you go back to 1979, in November of 1979, the Iranians took 66 Americans hostage for more than 444 days at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran at the start of the Iranian Revolution. And then in 1983, they killed more than 261 U.S. Marines and Navy officers in the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut. That was one of the largest terror attacks before 9/11. Then you can go on and on in terms of the IEDs and the EFPs, the explosively formed penetrators that maimed and wounded and killed American soldiers in Iraq. Those were Iranian weapons that were used by their proxies. So the president was very clear that before this operation started a few hours ago, there was some speculation as to what the menu of options the president would choose from when presented by CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper, who was at the White House just 2 days ago. He had a choice, whether he was going to simply target the nuclear sites again, was he going to target the leadership, the ballistic missile stores, which is very important to the Israelis because those missiles can reach not only U.S. bases in the region, but also Israel. They don't yet have an intercontinental ballistic missile that can reach the United States. But the president was very clear that they could soon, and that this program needed to be halted along with the nuclear program. In his Truth Social post, it was clear that he was in favor of regime change, calling on the Iranian people after the bombing ends, which, as we've reported, is not going to be hours, but is going to be days. that he called on them to rise up and basically take back and seize their government and throw off the mantle of this oppressive leadership that has basically controlled with an iron fist the regime since 1979. So it's clear that the president took the broadest range of options, joined in this joint strike with the Israelis. And the Israelis are targeting in these initial strikes Iran's leadership, and they may in fact have killed them. So we will wait and see. We expect to hear from the president, as you mentioned, later this morning, and we'll get some battle damage assessment from U.S. Central Command as well as from the IDF. I can report on one other target or two other that we've learned about in the recent hours. It appears that an Iranian naval headquarters down in Bandar Abbas and on Kark Island, those were among the targets. And we have been mentioning how important it was for the U.S. military to target Iran's Navy from the get-go. That's something that did not happen last June. And that Navy is what can disrupt the flow of oil and shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, which is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. And those Navy vessels can also, the fast boats that Lucas Tomlinson was describing that swarm U.S. vessels in the region and cause untold, potential damage to those ships. And they had to be taken out because they could threaten some of those destroyers that are based in the Northern Arabian Sea. We also understand that there have been some explosions in eastern Iran near the Pakistani border. That is significant because we've heard the president talk about the close alliance now with Pakistan, and Pakistan certainly would have bases there that the U.S. might find useful for any sort of airstrikes in eastern Iran. Griff?
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin. Jennifer, great reporting. Thank you for that. We will check back in with you throughout the morning. Joining us now, retired Navy SEAL Mike Sarraille. Good morning, Mike. As the nation wakes up to a major combat operation with strikes across Iran happening in a joint U.S.-Israeli operation, what are your thoughts? All right, we'll work to get retired Navy SEAL Mike Sarraille on the phone there. As you do that, and you're waking up right now, major combat operation. Coming across the Middle East, and we are watching, this is the map here, the naval assets in the Middle East, significantly with the USS Gerald Ford in the Eastern Mediterranean, the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. All right, I believe we've got retired Navy SEAL Mike Sarraille on the line. Mike, as we're waking up, the nation is waking up to this major operation. The Pentagon has dubbed it Operation Epic Fury. What are your thoughts?
Well, good morning, guys. First off, my thoughts and prayers are with our brave soldiers and their families back here in the United States who are probably on edge for the safety of their people. But quite interesting what's going on right now. Let me give you a description of what I think is going on. Primary and up front, we want to establish air and sea dominance. It's interesting that Israel and what we're being told is striking the political leadership or military leadership. The U.S. is most likely focused, again, with the air dominance of something conducting what we call SEAD and DAD, which is the suppression and destruction of enemy air defenses. So we're most likely focused on taking out radars, surface-to-air missile sites, command links. We basically want to blind them. We want to deafen them. And this is opening up the corridors for future strikes. So the counter-missile campaign is going to be a focus. We're going to be hunting their launchers, their depots, and their production and support nodes. Naturally, as per President Trump's address, the nuclear sites are a focus, but you want to focus on anything that can be a direct threat to our bombers or fighters as they come in. If you look at this as a phase, we're opening the airspace and we're probably blunting Iran's missile capability. But what a huge concern here is the suppression of Iran's missile capability. They understand that our magazine depth, whether it's the Iron Dome, it's David's Sling, or even our air defense and strike capabilities, our magazine depth is only so much. So we've got to keep an eye. They're going to most likely hit us with their cheaper drones to erode at our magazine depth over the next few days. That's ultimately their goal, so that ballistic or cruise missiles can make it into Israel or strike our sea power, both in the Gulf and in the Med.
Mike, you really hit on something I think is very significant and something that I think we're going to hear a lot about, and that is the Siad likely initial operation. That's the suppression and destruction of enemy air defenses. Talk to me a little bit about how those F-22 Raptors working in tandem with our elite F-35 jets likely played a role in getting in, mapping those air defenses of Iran, targeting them, and ultimately trying to disable them and take them out.
Yeah, great question. So for the audience, a good way of thinking about this is the suppression of enemy air defense the intent is to blind them and pin them down. You jam radars, you force the SAM crews to shut down, you disrupt their command links and keep defenses from effectively engaging our forces or striking Israel. The DEAD is the destruction. That's when we kill the system. You destroy the radars, their launcher vehicles, their command posts, and supporting power and communications so the threats stay down. That is, without a doubt, the goal in this initial phase. Now, you mentioned the F-22 or the F-22s and the F-35s. The F-22s are one of the most advanced, as well as the F-35, advanced fighter systems in the world. One of the, beyond air-to-air combat, one of the primary roles of the F-22 is almost taken as its job is to paint a yellow brick road for the fighters and the bombers coming behind them in order to strike military or political targets. So the F-22 from far or long-range distances can not only disrupt, but also destroy their surface-to-air capabilities. And that's what we want to focus on in the next few hours. If we can completely shut down their ability to confront or combat our fighters and bombers, then we've paved that yellow brick road for what will be a sustained campaign until hopefully, again, according to the president's message to the people of Iran, they rise up.
And Mike, some of the military guys I talk with describe this initial Siad operation as sort of kicking down the door, the initial kicking down of the door to lay and pave that road. We saw this similar in the operation, it seems, in Venezuela when we took Nicolas Maduro. So much, it was so successful that it appeared that really the missile defense of Venezuela, which is provided by Russian technology, which is similar, we believe, to what's in Iran, it was so successful that literally no shot essentially got sent by Venezuela against our forces.
You're accurate. And this is the technologically advanced nature of our military today and the men and women that control and employ those systems. What's sort of shocking at this point is the lack of response or the strikes from Iran. Again, this could be an indicator of the campaign in June. We degraded their
This is a commercial for Pioneer Seed Corn.
In 1926, Pioneer
you saw in the shock and awe in the early days of the Iraq campaign in 2003. So this will continue. We will become more effective with our strikes in eroding their military nodes, their Navy, and that is a big thing to keep in mind. So we don't want disruption to the maritime or shipping lanes. So expect that we're going to target the IRGC Navy at a heavy rate. Additionally, the IRGC Navy has a large mining capability. So that is going to be a key objective in the early days, is to erode their Navy, that it does not affect the Strait of Hormuz. This is also where it brings in the Houthis, who have the potential to disrupt the Red Sea, which is also a major oil and LNG maritime shipping lane. So our dominance of the sea is going to be a priority, as well as that air dominance, to ensure that shipping lanes are not disrupted, as well as we are providing what we call a white space for both our carrier strike groups in the Med, in the Gulf, to remain safe in the ability to continue sustained strikes for days, if not weeks.
And Mike, as you talk about that dominance in the sea being as important as the air dominance, what are we likely headed for? Because we are hearing, obviously, from the Pentagon, from well-placed U.S. officials that are saying that this is not going to be hours, this is going to be days.
Yes, days not only to degrade the military targets as well as the Iranian leadership, but here's something to consider. We're expecting a regime change. That is the goal. That is what President Trump articulated. So right now, we're not going to see a response from the Iranian people. They're not going to uprise in the early hours. Like any natural human, if I was in their position with my family, I'd be hunkered down. I'd be waiting to see how the situation develops before we see any, let's say, coordinated effort with the protests from the Iranian people that we've seen over the weeks, before something of substance becomes available to us. They're going to wait. They're going to see how the U.S. and Israel strike Iran, where they erode their capabilities. And we know that strikes have taken place in Tehran as well as many provinces across Iran. So don't expect an uprising from the Iranian people in the early days. Again, they're going to wait for the situation to develop, much like the military does.
And they will wait for that battle damage assessment to find out about the targets. And you're seeing a lot of the areas struck on your screen now in this map. We don't yet have a battle damage assessment. Perhaps that will come when President Trump speaks to the nation again later this morning. Retired Navy SEAL Mike Sarraille, excellent insight and observations as always. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. God bless America.
God bless America, indeed. And if you're just joining us and waking up, a major combat operation has begun, a joint U.S.-Israeli operation striking multiple targets across Iran. Iran retaliating at Israel, sirens ringing there in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, and of course in other Middle Eastern countries like Bahrain, UAE. We want to go back now to Jennifer Griffin, Chief National Correspondent. Jennifer, what are you learning as the nation wakes up to this major combat operation that the Pentagon has dubbed Epic Fury?
Well, Griff, first I want to correct the record. I stated earlier that I was questioning how the U.S. was broadcasting in Persian into Iran at this time because, and I had stated that the Persian service had been let go at the start of the administration. But I have since learned that, in fact, the Persian service has been up and running ever since last summer. They were brought back during the 12-day war last summer, and the Persian service of VOA is broadcasting into Iran as we speak. We also have seen that there is a message in Persian from Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah, who is seen as a leader in exile, a potential future leader of Iran, and he has been speaking directly to the Iranian people. The president's message was very clear to the Iranian people that this will be the time after the bombing stops. They should take matters into their own hands and rise up and throw off this regime. Israel has been busy targeting the leadership of Iran. We have unconfirmed reports that the targets have included everyone from the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, as well as the defense minister, as well as the head of the judiciary, as well as Ali Shamkhani, who I'm told is the supreme leader's advisor on the nuclear program. So it is very clear that this operation, this joint operation between the United States and Israel, is also an attempt at regime change. And as a result, the Voice of America, as well as Reza Pahlavi, are broadcasting in Persian, likely through Starlinks and other means, because the internet has been down, we understand, in Iran since the operation began. Griff?
All right, Chief National.
Introducing Virtual Up from Nespresso. Your coffee, your way.
Yeah, Griff, this is breaking news. A senior Israeli official tells Fox News that Iran's supreme leader and Iran's president were targeted in strikes against the Iranian capital of Tehran. Also targeted were the commanding officers responsible, according to this official, for the mass murder of Iranian protesters. The official adds that battle damage assessments will come out later. But again, this is a massive development. A senior Israeli official telling Fox News that Iran's supreme leader and Iran's president, so the Ayatollah Khamenei and Masoud Pezeshkian, were targeted in Israeli strikes against the capital of Tehran. We don't know if they were successful as of yet. These battle damage assessments take some time, but it gives you a sense that the Americans and the Israelis, again, chose the most significant option that was on the table for military action against Iran. At this hour, the Iranians are still responding with ballistic missile fire against Israel. More alerts just sounded on phones across this country, urging people to get into bomb shelters. This will be a back and forth that continues in the days ahead as the Iranians not just continue their targeting of Israel, but also regional Gulf countries, from the UAE to Saudi Arabia to Bahrain. This is a regional war that is developing following these American and Israeli strikes against Iranian leadership. And you can hear that right now, Griff. Air raid sirens are sounding across Israel's second largest city of Tel Aviv. Stay with me here. Can you grab my vest? Just stay with us, Griff.
Trey Higgs there in Tel Aviv as he puts on his protective wear, the flak jacket there. Sirens are ringing across Tel Aviv. Sirens have rung across Jerusalem. Iran clearly is retaliating. We have seen Israelis going to the bomb shelters. And Trey, a frightening moment there.
Yeah, right now, this is a defining moment. Israeli cities are under attack. And again, we can report to you at this hour, a senior Israeli official tells Fox News that Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, were targeted in these strikes. The Israelis looking to decapitate Iranian leadership, to, as how some described in the planning process, cut the head of the snake. And the Americans supporting the Israelis in these strikes. This was a combined effort to take out Iranian leadership. We, again, don't have the battle damage assessments, but just stay with me here. Okay, you can see right now, there's a missile interceptor. And my cameraman's gonna stay on it. There's two of them right now, soaring through the skies over Tel Aviv. And you can see those lines of white smoke. Those are the interceptors that are currently in the air right now, looking to intercept the incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire. You see, this is live right now as those sirens sounded. Millions of people across central Israel are in bomb shelters as the Israelis work to shoot down this incoming Iranian fire. And Griff, it just gives you a sense of how kinetic all of this is going to be in the hours and days ahead. Again, President Trump overnight making that address, not just to the nation, but to the world. And you can hear the explosions there. Those are interceptors that are successfully shooting down those incoming Iranian ballistic missiles. And again, it's not just here in central Israel, Griff, it is across this country, and you hear those explosions there as these missiles are being shot down in the distance. Griff.
Trey, a frightening moment there. Please stay safe. But let me ask you, because as we are learning that this is likely going to be days, not hours, and the Israeli people not new to the interceptors and Iron Dome having to defend against missile attacks. But at the moment we're in now, and as the country wakes up and realizes this joint U.S.-Israel strike on Iran is likely going to push Iran to throw the heaviest punch they have. Is Israel prepared to withstand this barrage that we are likely heading into at this hour?
They are. And remember, Israel has a tiered missile defense system. At the lowest level, the Iron Dome. Then they have David's Sling. And then they have the Arrow 2 and 3 system. And all of those systems will be on standby, prepared to shoot down incoming fire. What you just saw there was likely the Arrow 2 or 3 system. again, shooting down those incoming ballistic missiles after those sirens sounded across Israel's second largest city of Tel Aviv. You also have the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, the world's largest, that is currently off the coast of Israel. It's closer to the northern city of Haifa. That is also expected to help to shoot down some of the incoming fire. And then in some of the more rural areas out in the Negev desert, you have the THAAD and Patriot missile defense systems supplied by the Americans. Over the past several days and even weeks, Griff, we have seen these C-17 planes landing across the Middle East and here in Israel, many of them carrying these missile defense systems and the interceptors that are needed. So the preparation for this operation that was launched by President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister not the dozens or even 100+ missiles that we've seen in the past from the Iranians. And this is two-part, an indication that the Iranians may be trying to reserve some of their fire, understanding that this is going to be a sustained war. And also the fact that the Americans and the Israelis likely went after much of the launching positions that are spread throughout Iran. This is going to go on for many days. And so they have to be prepared not only looking east, but also looking north and south. You have Iran's largest proxies in the region, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and you have the Houthis in Yemen, both who have missile capabilities and drone capabilities of their own. And I was briefed by an intelligence official in the past week who indicated there are still thousands of missiles and rockets in the arsenal of Hezbollah. They have the capability to target major population centers. And previously we heard from their leadership, what's left of it following the Israeli campaign against Hezbollah, that they would respond directly if Iran's supreme leader was targeted. And again, we can bring you that information today, according to a senior Israeli official, that Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, were targeted. We do not know the outcome of those strikes. Again, these battle damage assessments can take hours, if not days, depending on the location and the depth of the strikes. But the latest information, Griff, that we have, Israel remains under attack at this hour by Iranian ballistic missile fire, and this country is bracing for days of war ahead. Griff?
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst, live for us in Tel Aviv. Great coverage, Trey. Stay safe. We'll check back in with you throughout the morning. And if you're just waking up and tuning in, major combat operations, a joint operation between the U.S. and Israel striking multiple targets across Iran. Iran retaliating around 2:30 a.m. this morning. President Trump taking to Truth Social with this video message. Watch.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to continue to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels and international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again. They can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades.
The sun is dying.
And we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or in the alternative, face certain death. So lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
That was President Trump a short time ago announcing major combat operations in conjunction with Israel have begun in Iran, striking multiple targets in the capital in Tehran, but also in other cities in multiple locations, with Iran retaliating, striking in Israel, launching missiles. No casualties have been heard in Israel, but obviously, as we saw from Trey Yingst, the bomb shelters are filling up as missiles are launched there. Also, Iran responding at multiple Middle Eastern countries, in Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, in Qatar. Let's go now to Justin Fulcher, who is a former senior advisor to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and former Pentagon official. Justin, good morning. What do you make of what we're waking up to this morning?
Well, good morning. I think what we've seen is that last night's actions were not impulsive. This was a deliberate, coordinated military operation designed to degrade Iran's capacity, which is a very clear threat to the United States and our forces across the region. The U.S. and Iran have been negotiating for months, really since Operation Midnight Hammer, yet Iran has continued to advance its missile capabilities. They've shown a desire to continue enriching uranium at dangerous levels, and they've empowered their proxies all across the region, which pose a threat to American personnel. At this point in time, there comes a point where...
Hello, Cornwall. Are you thirsty? Let me help you quench your thirst.
If Iran continued down this path, there would be consequences. And what we're seeing now is the U.S. military executing with precision and upright professionalism. This is about restoring deterrence, protecting American service members, and ultimately preventing a nuclear-armed Iran from destabilizing the region even more. And strength, when applied decisively, is often what prevents a larger war. And right now, the Pentagon's job is to ensure that when that diplomacy fails, that America retains overwhelming capability. And right now, we've seen that completely on full display.
We have, and Justin, we expect President Trump to address the nation later today. What might we learn in those comments?
Well, I think what we've seen across the region is both the U.S. and Israel, as well as Iran's retaliation, is that this is a definitely an unfolding situation. And what I believe President Trump will share when he addresses the nation is a lot more details around specific targets, how effective they were, and ultimately, the path moving forward. He's made it extremely clear that he is going to do whatever it takes to back up and prevent Iran from developing advanced nuclear capabilities. And what we've seen from some of the reporting on the ground and around the region is that it appears to be that the U.S. has been striking key military advantages and assets that Iran has. And Israel's, of course, taking their approach, targeting some of the key leadership, it seems. But ultimately, I believe President Trump will outline a lot more of how effective this campaign has been over the past few hours.
And Justin, that's interesting. We will see if in the president's address, if we get, as you alluded to, the battle damage assessment. How successful was this initial operation? An operation that the president and the officials at Pentagon, where you used to work, are saying this is going to be days, not hours. But in these initial hours, we were talking with retired Navy SEAL Mike Sorelli. He and I were talking about what was likely some of the initial operations geared towards SEAD and DIAD, which you well know is a suppression and destruction of enemy air defenses using our technology, the F-22 Raptors, the F-35 Lightning Strike, to go in and take out those capabilities. But as we are also seeing, Iran is retaliating, striking or sending missiles not only at Israel, but across the Middle East. What might you surmise we'll learn in this battle damage assessment?
Well, what we've seen is that the U.S. definitely appears to be targeting some of those air defense capabilities, the surface-to-air missile stockpiles and drone and missile stockpiles that Iran has. There are options for Iran to retaliate, and we've seen that with attempted drone strikes and missile strikes being launched towards Israel, but also towards American bases and assets in the region. And so what I expect that President Trump will likely outline is the effectiveness of the U.S. military, which is by far the greatest military on earth, being completely able to neutralize a lot of these key Iranian military assets. And so I expect President Trump will outline that, but also discuss, a way forward in terms of, what the future of some of the military and kinetic actions in the region look like.
And Justin, we have no reports of casualties, injuries in Israel yet. We have no reports of any casualties or injuries to U.S. Soldiers or airmen, anyone involved in this. So far, we don't know. But I want to get to this because I think it's an important point to make, and that is when you had the flawless executions of Midnight Hammer, the flawless execution in Venezuela, capturing Nicolas Maduro. In this case, the Pentagon messaged very strongly, and the president saying that we could see American casualties here. What do you make of the importance of sending that message?
Well, I think President Trump is setting real expectations that this isn't just like the Maduro raid. This is something far, far more widespread. This is certainly has already shown that it's a regional conflict with potential strikes on assets, American assets across the region. And so ultimately, I think President Trump is being very clear about expectation setting with the American people, but also this is not just capturing, one person like in Venezuela. This is ultimately undermining serious military capabilities that Iran has and ensuring that their nuclear weapons program stops for good. So, thank God there have been no American casualties up to this point, at least not reported. And I hope we can minimize that absolutely as much as necessary and much as possible. But ultimately, the American military is prepared for all contingencies. And what we've seen is that they're able to execute extremely swiftly and effectively with very minimal casualties.
Justin Fulcher, former Pentagon official. Justin, thank you for your time and getting up early this morning.
Thank you.
Joining us now, Jamil Jaffer, Director of the National Security Law and Policy Program at George Mason University and former Chief Counsel and Senior Advisor for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And Jamil, as you heard Justin just mentioning there, it is indeed now a regional conflict. This has regional implications with Iran launching missiles across the Middle East at places like Bahrain.
Bud Light, now that's an easy call. With its clean, crisp taste, Crispy Boy season has arrived. Bud Light, easy call.
Bring other people into the fight. A lot of these countries have indicated that they're concerned about this conflict, and yet the United States and Israel have gone forward. And so now Iran bringing them into the conflict by attacking facilities in their region, in their areas, is going to cause real problems and probably potentially bring them to the fight as well.
And Jamil, as we are learning just of the early operations, of course, it was in the middle of the night that President Trump gave that message we just played, announcing this operation. And you have now seen the number of strikes that we've put up a map of the areas. But as you look at the intended goal, the question on so many Americans' minds today, when they wake up and realize what is transpiring and what will be transpiring for days, not hours, what do you see as the end goal here?
Well, President Trump in his message on Truth Social is very clear that Iran can never be allowed to get a nuclear weapon. That the Iranian leadership is what has caused this. It is their fault that they have gone after Americans. He mentioned the 1983 attack on the Marine barracks in Beirut. He talked about the attack on the USS Cole, which Iran may have trained al-Qaeda operatives. He talked about the repeated attacks on American soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan by Iranian proxy forces. So we know that Iran has done this for years and years and years, has gone after Americans. So he made the claim that what we need to do here is take out their ability to have a nuclear program. And what we now know is that strikes have targeted the leadership. Israeli officials have made clear that both the president of Iran and the supreme leader were targeted. And President Trump also called upon the Iranian people that when the time comes, it is your opportunity, your unique opportunity, and perhaps a rare one, to take out your own leadership. He called upon the Iranian people to engage in regime change. So what's clear is the U.S. isn't just looking to terminate the Iranian nuclear program or go after their missile facilities or the like, all of which the president talked about, but also looking for regime change in Iraq, not directly by the United States, but by the Iranian people themselves.
And as we watch the international response in countries, you've got the UAE calling this a flagrant violation of international law. You've got Saudi Arabia condemning it. Do you anticipate that other countries get involved, not just the U.S. and Israel?
Well, look, I think it's very possible. I think the threat that Iran poses to the globe is massive. Obviously, an Iranian regime armed with nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles that can reach across Europe. And eventually, President Trump said that he believed they're building capability to reach the United States. We know that is the case. And so, you know, it's very possible that countries in Europe and the Middle East get involved, particularly if Iran expands the war by hitting other facilities in those countries. But as of right now, it looks like a joint U.S.-Israeli operation. It looks like it will be swift and aggressive. You've seen the number of strikes in a variety of Iranian cities around the region and in Iran. So we'll see how this plays out. But in the long run, the U.S. and Israel have the firepower necessary to fight this battle and win it. Iran would be well-minded to understand the United States will not take kindly to further attacks on its forces, particularly if American forces are killed. And, you know, President Trump has teed up that American forces may be injured in this fight. He's made that clear to the American people with this post on Truth Social. He's going to speak to the nation later. But the president is prepared to take casualties, but he's also prepared to do what it takes to remove the Iranian regime's ability to have a nuclear weapon, and has called upon the Iranian people to remove their regime themselves. So this war could be over quickly, but the removal of the Iranian regime by the Iranian people and its replacement by we'll see whom, potentially the former Shah's son who lives here in the United States, that may also come to pass. We'll see what happens over the next days and weeks.
We shall indeed see. And the president is, hopefully we will hear from him. We're not confirmed that we will hear from him, but we expect that later today. Jamil Jaffer, thank you for getting up early and for your insight. We appreciate it as the country wakes up to a major combat operations being launched in Iran, a joint operation between the U.S. and Israel. We turn things over now to Fox and Friends.
All right, breaking this morning, a major conflict unfolding right now across the Middle East. The U.S. and Israel are carrying out joint strikes against Iran, hitting military targets across the country in a mission named Operation Epic Fury. Welcome to the 6 a.m. hour of Fox and Friends weekend on a significant day for the world.
That's exactly right. Israel seeking to take out the Iranian leadership. That's the goal. And we are already seeing retaliation from Iran. The regime launching waves of missiles toward Israel and U.S. interests that happen to be there in the region, including this attack on the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. We are also getting reports of blasts heard in Qatar, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. Sirens sounding across Israel as the IDF are working to intercept incoming Iranian ballistic missiles.
So the details of this operations are unfolding by the minute. Here's what we know right now. The rare daytime strike by the U.S. and Israel hit over 30 targets in the first wave. And the Pentagon is reportedly planning for several days of attacks on Iran. We also know that Iran's supreme leader is reportedly not in Tehran and was transferred to a secure location hours ago.
All right, so as of this morning, we have no official casualty figures, nor do we know the specific weaponry.
The sun is dying. If we do nothing, everything on this planet will go extinct.
You'll find a solution.
An 8-minute statement confirming the attack and the objectives. Here is his message in full.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels and international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again. They can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces, and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill the lives of But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or in the alternative, face certain death. So lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.